Okay, it's just a pleasure to be with you all. Thank you for having me. So we're going to continue on in our Relational Vampire series, and we're going to look at needy people. Maybe some of you are wondering, who are we going to be talking about today? I've had wives this month say to me, are we talking about husbands? That's what they said. But I also, I'm sure, have husbands here, or maybe brothers or sisters or parents of young adults are going, oh, I know who we're going to talk about. So we're going to talk about them all. But we want to make a distinction right now between needy people and people in need, because those are two very, very different things. So a needy person always wants more. There's just this constant need with them. And they can't get enough, and they're very dependent on other people. We have a lot of needy people here in that room back there. I've been back there during this series, and I'm going to tell you about needy. Pick me up, set me down, give me a hug, give me a drink, give me an apple, give me apple juice. No, I do think I want water. I think I would want more goldfish crackers. Put out some Play-Doh, put out some coloring, right? But that's very healthy, right? They're needy, and they're supposed to be needy. But then as we develop and as we grow, we're going to hit times where we have needs, which is very different than being perpetually needy. In Kids Club, they have a really great snack time. We're very big on snacks here. And in the old days, when the posthumous kids were here, and some of them are here with us today, we had to have a pre-snack to go before the snack. So I had to have a pre-snack from 10 to 10:15, and then a snack at 10:45. So we've slowly weaned that off, and we don't have that. But often I come to church a bit early when I'm in the Kids Club, because I just want to spend some time, getting in the zone. And I often have my grapefruit cup, which is one of my favorite treats in the morning. It's just so refreshing, and I love it. And so last week, I'm having my grapefruit cup, and up comes a little line of people with their little mouths open, like the baby birds here. And I'm like, oh, we're all sharing the grapefruit cups. But I didn't want to share my spoon, right? 5 little people, we're not sure who has what germs. So I'm literally feeding them like a mama bird with my fingers into their mouths, and off they go away, right? Very normal in their development. We might have pets at home that are needy. I'm going to say I challenge anyone here to tell me a story about a more needy pet than we have. So we have this free dog. And when Ryan and Megan, I always said to them when they were young, I want a dog. And I said, yeah, when you're 12 and 10. Because when they're 5 and 3, that seems like a long time away, right? But then lo and behold, 12 and 10 come, and you have to honor what you said. So I found this wonderful free dog, and we brought him home, a black lab, and this free dog has more health issues than we could ever imagine. We didn't even know that things existed that this dog got. So every 25 days, we give him his life-saving injection. And in between the 25 days, we fight any other infection injection he gets every 25 days. And then we fight infection every day in between then. And he's a black lab. So people who have labs, I know you get it, or retrievers, they're very emotionally needy. So last night, Brad was out. So Ryan and Megan and I, my kids, we decided to watch a show. We hadn't cried enough this week, so we decided to watch This Is Us to get our full tears out. And we're sitting there watching the show, and Shiloh comes up, and you can see he's just a little bit not content. When you can just sense your dog, and he's back and forth, and he finally settles on his dog pillow, which is at our feet. So here's 3 adults, and the dog is at our feet. And in comes the moaning and the whining and the crying and the groaning till I can't take it anymore. And I'm like, put that on pause. And I go get my yoga mat. I lay it down with a blanket and pillows, and I have like a human mat now beside the dog mat, and I'm petting him. And everything's calm, so we turn it back on. In comes the whining and the groaning and the grumbling. So Ryan has to slide down the couch to be petting him on his head. I'm petting him on his back. And now that his full body is being petted, he'll sleep now. So we do that throughout the show. That's needy, right? But what are you going to do? And if anyone here is like, that's too indulgent, and if Brad was home, it would have been different, there is no one in our family more indulgent to our dog than this one right here. So we have these people in our lives. If you think about maybe it's a coworker or a friend or a neighbor or a relative who's always looking for getting a need met. And sometimes it can feel very exhausting for us. But then on the other side, the person in need is someone who's characterized as mostly taking care of their needs, like we're supposed to be when we're growing up. But then there's times they hit needs, times of grief, that grief journey, they need people to come alongside. Or perhaps it's a mental health crisis, or a financial stressor, or maybe a change in life where there's a need. God has a sense of humor when he gives you your topic for sermons. So Pastor Scott was 8 months ago, beginning of the year, when can you come? And it was going to be a busy busy time, and I'm like, you know what, I'm going to find some time in October. So I've been mulling about this over several months, and 3 weeks ago I get this amazing job offer, which is an amazing thing, except for on the other hand, I have an amazing job, right? So we go back and forth. There's the security of knowing who you work with and your coworkers and the people that you've grown to admire over the years, and then there's this other good opportunity, right? And so then comes the debate. So if you wonder if, we ever, wonder if what we preach about, we know about, yeah, I know what it's like to be in need these last 3 weeks, right? I was being very emotionally needy to my family, Can we talk about it? Can we look at the pros and cons? Can we, talk about some of my anxiety? Can we talk about the good stuff? But then that's going to pass, right? I accepted the new job. I'm going to start a new job, and then I'm going to, get going in that path. So people hit these little times in life where they experience a bit of a crisis, but then they come back up. So let's look at the strainer or the bowl. And if you were with me in my boundary talk last year, you would remember this. But I'm going to repeat it in case there's new people here today. They need to hear it. Or in case you zoned out during this talk a year ago, I'm going to repeat it again. So we have the strainer type people. Those are the people that we're pouring in encouragement and love and support. Can I give you a ride? Can I give you some finances? Can I drop off groceries? And it's just going through the strainer. They just become more needy and more needy and more needy, and that dependence just grows. But then we have people over here, which is more like a bowl. So we pour in that love and support and encouragement, and what happens is they hold that, and they do something with that, and they grow from that. And so we have to decide, who are we dealing with? So when we're thinking about some of our neighbors or coworkers or family friends, are we dealing with somebody who's a bull that, they just really need that little bit of support right now and some good change is going to happen from that? Then we know what to do, right? We give. But if they're a strainer, if they're characterized by the more you give, the more they need, the more you give, the more they need, we might need to do a different approach. We might want to consider, what other options could we do? So I'm going to give you some scenarios here, and I'm going to test your knowledge around what we could do differently. So then Pastor Scott's going to come and ask you. So let's get practical. Your college-age child has moved away from home for the first time. And at the end of the first month, they call you to say that they're short $376 for end-of-month expenses. So you send them an e-transfer for the full amount. And at the end of the second month, they call to inform that they're short $427. So you send them an e-transfer for that full amount. And at the end of the third month, you receive a call, they're short $503. You should keep sending them money, right? So I'm no financial advisor, but my guess here is if we went from 3 to 4 to 5, then I'm guessing the next month we're going to be in the early 6s. So that's just my guess, okay? So let me give the first answer. So one answer is, you're just going to keep doing this every month. As the money demands go up, you're just going to keep sending it. So that's one option, right? It might become a bit of a burden, but that is an option. What are some other options? Oh.
Sure, send me the documentation on how you spent all the money I sent you already, and I want to see all the ins and outs, and we'll see if you deserve it.
Okay. So for Mike, there's a little bit of accountability for this money, right? So if you're college age, I'm going to use Megan as an example. I'm sure she won't mind. Megan's passion right now is music and travel, right? So am I going to, if I get that receipt and it's all for concerts and travel, when I haven't been able to go to concerts and travel because I can't afford it, there might be some resentment grow in there, right? But if it's for things like I had unexpected expenses, I might reconsider. Okay, so we want some accountability. Good start. What else can we do? What's another option? Yes. Your kids are going to be listening because they're going to be coming up to college age. This is what Dad's going to do.
Create a set amount to send them each month.
Nice.
And they are responsible for the rest.
Okay. So let's establish an amount that I can afford, and we'll give that. Great. Other options. Yep. Oh, Scott, we're making you work.
They're obviously living beyond their means, so I would ask them to get a job.
Okay, yeah. Great option. Look for a job. Look, is there any grants or bursaries that can be helping us out? Yes.
I would sit down with them and look at where the money's going and how they might be able to manage their money a little bit differently. Instead of just doing a flat, no, you can't get it.
Okay.
Why?
Okay, so you may be doing some budgeting, right? This might be a bit of an education piece. I know when I left home for the first time, my dad told me for 10 years before I left home, you don't know how hard it is to make ends meet. And I'd be like, yeah, Dad, until you leave. And then it's like, oh my goodness, it's so hard to make ends meet, right? So that's a real growing time for us as young adults to get learning how to budget and how to manage that money differently. Nice. Okay, let's go to the next one. I got a big emotional hook in this one for you. So a mentor that supported you for years calls you nightly at 11 p.m. and they always chuckle and explain, oh, I've always been a night hawk. You usually like to be asleep before 11 p.m. because you have to be up by 6 for your work shift. You notice that you've been late for work a few times a week and you're feeling more irritated with your coworkers due to the lack of sleep. You just keep picking up the phone at 11 o'clock, right? What do we think? So that's one option, is we pick up the phone at 11 o'clock and we're grumpy the next morning.
Try not to make excuses for your boss.
Pardon?
Try not to make excuses for your boss.
Okay, so be more accountable with your boss around why you are the way you are. Okay.
Blame somebody.
Cindy.
My phone's on silent starting at like 9.
Okay, so putting up that boundary that says, I've got to be done now, all the needs in the world. I'll tell you a little secret at our house when my kids were young. I'm a real morning person. My poor daughter's not a morning person. She had to live her whole life with a morning person who's so cheerful and happy in the morning. And at 8 o'clock, we had a little rule at our house. No problems after 8 o'clock. So what does that mean? When you go to bed, you might have worries, you might have concerns, and we're going to talk about that, but we needed to talk about that before 8 o'clock, or we need to talk about that first thing in the morning when I actually have something I can give with you for you then, right? We're not counting nightmares at 2 in the morning. That's a bit different. But there has to be some limits as to how much you have to give during the day. And I start my day at 5:30, 6 o'clock. By 8 o'clock, yeah, we're kind of nearing the end where I'm not so helpful in these things. So shutting off your phone. Could we have a discussion with our mentor? Here's this mentor, helped us in our lives. We want to be there for them. What kind of discussion would we want to have with them? Yes, Jane.
I think the key word is mentor, so it's someone that you respect, so you should offer that respect back from them, to give that respect back to them, to have a conversation, to say, I love speaking to you, whoever, but I really have to get to bed by this time. Could we change our time earlier in the evening?
Nice, that negotiation. Oh, he's picking his wife.
You could just pick up the phone and call them at 8.
And what, sorry?
Just pick
call
up the
them
phone
at
and
8.
call them at 8.
Call earlier, yeah, you want to spend time with them, you want to be a support, but maybe 8 o'clock might work better for us. Maybe this person has a friend who loves to talk on the phone at 11 o'clock, right? We'll be the 8 o'clock person. Scott.
Just going along with Jane's comment about being respectful, you could also point out how helpful they have been to you and how you want to be helpful to them, but really to be so, kind of like your example, that you really need to have these conversations at an earlier time, or else I'm not going to be that helpful to you.
Nice. Okay, our last one. Your roommate, this is for our college student, I see some college-age people out there. Your roommate asks to borrow your lecture notes, and you happily hand them over. When it comes time for the midterm exam, you notice the notes are still missing, and your roommate says they haven't seen them. And over the next semester, you notice that your roommate does not contribute to the housekeeping duties, and you often have groceries missing from the fridge. Your roommate asks to borrow your car for reading week. You let them have it, right? Okay. This is our last one. What do we think? Is there alternative plans here?
Brad, did you come up?
Oh, we have a college-age student.
I think based on their pattern of behavior, I'd be comfortable saying no to that request, just because they've established a clear pattern that they're not really trustworthy with responsibilities.
Okay, so maybe more of a strainer.
A bit more of a strainer,
Yeah.
exactly. Yep.
Great. So maybe looking at those patterns, right? People who repeatedly follow the same thing. We have one at the back there.
So it depends if you want to actually solve this problem or if you would just want to get out of it.
Yes.
So
Wow, thank you.
If you want to solve it, you phone their parents.
Oh, okay. Oh, we're going right to the parents. That's awesome. Thanks, guys. Thank you so much for participating. So these are conversations that we might have that might feel awkward or unpleasant, right? But these are things like, what is the loving thing to do in this situation? Is the loving thing to do with the strainers, or just keep pouring it in, pouring it in, pouring it in, and build up resentment? Or is perhaps the loving thing to do at times saying, how could we fill this need in a different way? Do you need help, support with looking up the bus schedule? Do you have any other friends who are heading your way? And helping people build some of those skills and strengths. So let's see what the Bible says about need. So there's a neat passage in Matthew 7. So Jesus is giving the Sermon on the Mount, and my goodness, he is covering a lot in that sermon, right? How to love your enemies, how to be salt and light in the earth, murder, adultery, how to give oaths, how to pray, how to fast, how to deal with anxiety. He is packing a lot of topics into one sermon. So this is about 2/3 of the way through, and he's already talked about how we give to those in need, and he says he's for it. Jesus is for giving to those in need, and he wants us to give to those in need, but he wants us to do it in secret. So we're not going to be puffed up and arrogant about it and, put on the prayer chain, I've gone and dropped off some casseroles over here, or I've given a ride over there, right? We just do it in secret. But then this is an interesting passage right here, about 2/3 of the way through the Sermon on the Mount. Let's take a look. It says, do not judge, or you too will be judged. For in the same way you judge others, you will be judged, and with the measure you use, it will be measured to you. So why do you look at the speck of sawdust in your brother's eye, and you pay no attention to the plank in your own eye? How can you say to your brother, let me take the speck out of your eye, when all the time there's a plank in your own eye? You hypocrite, first take the plank out of your own eye, and then you will see clearly to remove the speck from your brother's eye. So let's just stop there for a moment. So this judgment is not talking about the law. It's not talking about magistrates and people who are actually judges keeping law and order. This is what we need in our society, and this is a very healthy piece. This is about judgment, where people are haughty and hasty in their decisions. They're critical. The message says, don't pick on people, jump on their failures, criticize their faults. That's what we're talking about here. But it is supporting discernment. So when people are discerning of a situation or of a request, right, they can kind of use their wisdom in this. So it's not about judging people's requests, it's about using some discernment. But then notice verse 6. Do not give dogs what is sacred. Do not throw your pearls to pigs. If you do, they may trample them under their feet and turn and tear you to pieces. So in that time, dogs were not like how dogs are today. Nobody in that time was making a little human bed beside their dog, and petting them. It just wasn't the case. Dogs were considered unclean. They were irritants in the city. The meat that's what is sacred, they would be talking about like the meat that would be sacrificed in a religious ceremony. So it's like, don't waste that on dogs. And what about this? Do not throw your pearls to pigs. So there's lots of different theories around what this means. Sometimes people think this is about the gospel. Sometimes people think this is about your good works. This is about your abilities. There are some things that the theologians do agree on. And here are some things that they agree on. Pigs do not need pearls, right? Can we agree with the theologians? Pigs do not need pearls. Pearls do not offer nourishment to pigs. Pearls are of no value. And so what they're suggesting is the pigs are going to be frustrated. They don't need pearls, right? And they might actually come back and challenge you or be difficult with you. And the other thing the theologians all agree on is pearls are something of great value. So all through the Bible, it's very clear that whenever they're speaking about pearls, it was something of great value. So don't throw something of great value to pigs where they don't need them. It doesn't offer them the nourishment they need. I have a Scottish friend, and I would go from my current job and visit another agency and offer support there. And so my Scottish friend would sometimes use terms that, I didn't know about, and I would be like, what are you talking about? And then she would explain it to me. And one time we had a potluck. Now, people who know me, they know that got a sweet tooth, right? Like people who say, oh, that makes my teeth hurt, I think that is the reason you eat desserts, right? That's the reason. You want to get to the point where your teeth are hurting, right? So we're at this potluck, and I have a little square of something, and I'm like, okay, good. Like I had my square. That's enough. I don't need any more. And it's mid-afternoon, you get a little bit hungry, 3:30, and all the desserts are on this desk right here, and I'm at this desk. So I've had to stare at these desserts from 1 to 3, and I did so good. And I thought, you know what I'll do? I'll just take a tiny little edge just to feel like I've had it. We call it in our home straightening the edge. There's no calories in the straightening of the edge. Whatever you eat off the edge, there's no calories in that. So I'll just straighten the edge. So as I'm cutting, like a hair's length, a tiny little piece, I hear a voice behind me go, "You greedy little pig." And I'm like, gracious, what is happening? Well, it's my Scottish friend, and we had a nice discussion after that in Canada, "you greedy little pig" is a little harsh, and in Scotland, it's kind of like a warm, like if you know somebody and they love you and you love them, you can say "greedy little pig," but in Canada, it's like, no, let's not say "greedy little pig." So I don't want anyone going home and be saying to your family, "Oh, it's like I'm throwing pearls to pigs," right? Because nobody wants to hear that. But it's a picture, right? It's a picture for us to understand that we have something precious in the Word of God, in our abilities, in our strengths, in our finances. We have something precious, and we want to make sure that they're going into a good direction. So, where should we be putting our treasures, so our pearls? So let's look at the progression of how people grow. So down here we have dependent, so that's characterized by that neediness. And then we move into more of an independent stage. In that independent stage, we're a bit more self-reliant. And then we move into an interdependent stage. So independence is not the goal of the church. We're not all supposed to be individual, little independent people having no needs and helping people with no needs. We're actually supposed to be working to interdependence, where I have needs, you have needs, and we try to fulfill the needs of others. So let's dive into dependent, and you can kind of see where would I fall in this category. So if we have any babies or toddlers in here, very normal for them to be in this stage. But if we're kind of let's say 19 and over, we should be working out of dependence into independence. So let's look at dependence. So we might be overly reliant on others. We might blame others when our needs aren't getting filled, like, "Oh, this person should have called and checked on me," or "This person should have spent time with me on a Saturday night. I was lonely." Other people might find you clingy, or they might be a bit suffocated by your needs at times. You might have difficulties making decisions without that constant reassurance from others. The thought I came from when I saw that, it's like the example was like, the person who's like, "Does this blue shirt match these tan pants?" Every day they got to check. Now I have somebody in my house like that, but they're actually colorblind. So that's very appropriate need, right? I didn't want them to feel bad because that's actually very appropriate to say, "Does this match?" right? But if we're not colorblind, these are some of the decisions that we need to be making ourselves, and not to have these constant reassurance or encouragement from others. You might have difficulty making decisions and have a lack of support, which may be perceived as abandonment. So let's look at independence. So in independence, you might love to be able to complete a task without any help. When you need help, it feels like admitting defeat, and it's hard to ask. So it's really shameful to have to say, "Hey, can you help me come boost my battery, or can you drop off some food?" You despise owing other people. We were, one of my coworkers was going through a challenging time, and we said, "Hey, why don't we have, we'll all donate a few dollars, and I'll go out on the weekend and get her little care package." And so one of the people said, "Oh, I'm going to give you some money for that." I said, "Sure, just throw it on my desk anytime in the next couple of weeks. I'll get the gift this week, but people can keep putting in their collection." And she's like, "Oh, no. I mean, it was $5. I couldn't owe you $5, right?" She went to her office and got the money. I just don't owe people, right? So this is someone who's fiercely independent, doesn't want to have any owing to others. You consider self-reliance to be the ultimate goal. So you might have come in here today and said, "I'm not needy at all. I'm not dependent. I'm independent," right? I've made it. But there's still another step. Independence is just the middle step. And sometimes we act a bit too independent or a bit too self-reliant because we fear that people may try to control us or manipulate us. So if anybody's here raising teenagers, this is kind of a confusing time for teenagers because they're going back and forth between dependence and independence. Dependence and independence. Perfectly normal, what they should be doing, because they're testing it out, right? So they're 20 feet away from the fridge, and they're going, "Hey, can you get me a drink?" Right? They're saying everything, but put it in a sippy cup, right? Get me a drink, right? But then when you say, "Hey, let's talk about future plans, goals, employment," They're like, oh, don't worry, I got it. I got my whole life mapped out, right? They don't want your feedback because now they're independent, right? So they're swinging back and forth these two extremes until they can kind of land on more of an independent spot. And then the last phase, which I'm going to challenge us, that this is where we should be landing as the church, is this interdependence. So in interdependence, I know I have my thoughts, you have your thoughts, but boy, do I ever benefit from that pooled knowledge. It broadens my perspective. If I was at home right now, not part of the church body, hearing your answers, getting feedback, in the living room, like let's say just reading my Bible, I'm not getting that shared perspective, right? I'm being very independent, but I'm not getting that interdependence. I recognize the need for support and to provide support and receive it, and I believe that together we're going to be better. And then I know how to ask for help, and then I can actually appreciate the support. So I'm not overcome with shame and regret when I have to ask for help. I can actually appreciate it. So where is the balance this morning? So balance is the key, right? So we want to be generous people. We want to meet some of those needs of our loved ones. You know, that's part of being in the faith community and a follower of Jesus, is being able to meet some of those needs. But if we find ourselves in that dependent stage, we actually have to kind of work hard about becoming more independent, don't we? Learning how to kind of make some of those choices ourselves and taking on some of those tasks ourselves. And if we find ourselves today in more of that independent stage, maybe we need to challenge ourselves to say, yeah, you know what, I'm pretty good about taking care of others, but sometimes I forget for people to ask them to take care of me. I think about all the times I've broken and sprained my ankle over the last several years, which you guys have seen me on when I'm coming in here in crutches, right? When I have crutches, it's pretty obvious to my family, right, to help me. So my family was so great. Every time I was on there, every time they would leave the house, they'd be like, what can we bring you? Anything to save me from going on crutches, right? Because it starts to feel very painful when you're on crutches. My sister always brings me Baskin-Robbins ice cream, because I don't know if you know that, but the best thing for a broken leg is Baskin-Robbins ice cream. Yeah, she knows. Every time it happens, she's there at my door with my Baskin-Robbins. It just works. So there's lots of things that people can see more visible, right? But what about if you have a broken heart, right? That's not so visible. That's where you need to be saying to people in your church or in your faith community, I have a need. I'm lonely. I'm grieving. I'm struggling with my mental health. I'm having relationship problems. Those things have to be brought out. A very common theme in counseling is that somebody will be struggling about something and then say, you know, my neighbors, my friends, my family, they didn't respond. And I'll be like, oh, what did you say to them? And the most common response is, I didn't say anything to them. They should have known, right? People can't read our minds. So if we're really good at reading other people's body language and their expressions, then we get good at kind of asking the right questions. But what if your family and friends, they're not so good at reading your body language? That's not their strength. They're not so good at reading your expressions. You're actually going to have to say that out loud. So finding a way to move from dependence to independence, and then potentially to land on is interdependence. So you can't say yes often if you don't say no occasionally. So every person in this room has the ability to meet the needs of people in your community, whether that's neighbors or coworkers, cousins, family, or some of the older adults in your life. You know, offering encouragement, offering prayer, sending a letter, fixing something for someone. That's my love language. You come to my house and you fix something. Oh my goodness, we'll be like this for life, right? Everybody has their own thing that they need. Some people need a casserole. Some people just need that hour at a coffee shop to dispel some of that loneliness. So we all have these pearls, and we can't be saying yes every time, because we say yes every time. What happens? We get depleted, we get resentful, there's no more pearls left, right? And we also have to direct our pearls in the right direction. So let's think back to the salad bowl, good direction to put our pearls in. The strainer, not such a good place to put the pearls in, because the person isn't ready yet for your treasures, right? The person isn't prepared yet. They've got some more work that they need to do in order to kind of grow up in that. I have a verse here to remind us in conclusion that there's good news, because we can be as needy as we want with God. So in the Bible, it's very clear that God is seen as our Father. And so we get to be the kid, and he gets to be our Father, and we can be as needy as we want with him. In fact, he delights in our need. He delights in our humbleness when we say, we need you, we need this, we need that. But when it comes to the church, how does the Bible describe us in the church? we're brothers and sisters. So let's think of a functional family, because we might have brothers and sisters that this would not be so functioning, right? But think of a functioning family where the dad is compassionate and caring and supportive, and that's what our relationship with God is like. And think about a family where the siblings, right, we're on an equal level. They have needs, we try to fill that. They have needs, we try to fill that for them, back and forth. There's some evenness there, right? That's a healthy piece. So if you think about the church as brothers and sisters, that's that beautiful example of that interdependence, right? That we all have needs, we all have gifts, we all have pearls, and it's going back and forth. Even Pastor Scott being our leader here, right? He's our leader and he's our brother, right? And so he can't be expected to be spending all of his pearls out here. There's actually pearls that have to go in his direction, right? Because we're brothers and sisters going back and forth. So let's go to the real source of what our needs are. And this is a beautiful verse, and I wondered if we could pray it together as a group. And think about, we're just going to take 10 or 15 seconds, and think about a need you might have. Is it maybe an emotional need? Is it a financial need? Do you have a need in a relationship? Is it a work-related need? Is it a mental health need? What need do you feel right now in your life? And you might even experience a little bit of discomfort when we think about our need and we think about the powerlessness that we sometimes experience when we have these needs. So now that we've got something, let's just commit that need to God by saying this verse together. But as for me, I am poor and needy. Come quickly to me, O God. You are my help and my deliverer. Lord, do not delay. So my prayer for you as we go into this week is that we start to become aware not only of the needs around us, but we become aware of our own needs. And we're brave enough to say what we do need as we continue to support those around us.
Thank you, Cheryl. That was amazing. What we're going to do is we're going to make Cheryl available afterwards. If you have questions, she's going to stay here till 6:30 in the prayer meeting. So all of you strains, you have her the whole afternoon, brittle legs and all. I'm just kidding. Thank you to Cheryl. Thank you for sharing that. I'm going to move the things along here because we got a couple announcements, but thank you for making yourself available. I asked her if she would take questions, but we've done a couple of those, and then we'll make her available for a little while afterwards. Right now, we're going to pass around the offering baskets. There's the outies, so the ones you take stuff out of, and the innies, the ones you put stuff in. In the outies, you'll find offering envelopes, response cards. If you're not receiving texts from us or emails, you may want to sign up for that. It just keeps you up to date. All the things are happening, similar to Art Sunday and different things you may want to participate in, small groups, programs, those kind of things. And also, a couple of things we have upcoming, not just a prayer meeting, but we have a Promise Keepers functions happening in Toronto. And one of our guys, Doug Schultz, who has a real heart for men's ministry, is trying to get a team of people to go down. And guys, if you're like me, you never really get enough of this kind of stuff. It's a good challenge. It's always a little bit, oh, why do I do this? But Doug's going to talk a little bit about that in a transformation zone it made in his own life. We're going to show that video, and then Doug's going to come up and talk for a couple of minutes, and then we'll close in a song.